Good evening, everyone. In today's session, you will learn how to perform asset capitalization or expense in Onfinity ERP. The objective enables you to understand the asset capitalization or expense process and its associated terms in the context of business processes. The prerequisites for creating an asset capitalization or expense in Onfinity ERP include having a configured tenant in your environment, configured organizations in your tenant, and assets defined in the system. In Onfinity ERP, asset capitalization refers to the process of converting a purchase-related cost into a capital asset on the balance sheet. When an AP invoice is entered and linked to an asset, you can specify whether the cost should be capitalized or treated as an expense. If capitalized, the cost is added to the asset's capital value and depreciated over its useful life, thereby increasing the asset's book value in the fixed asset register. If not capitalized, the cost is recorded as an expense against the selected asset without increasing its capital value. This is typically used for routine repairs, maintenance, or other non-capital expenditures related to the asset. For example, when recording an AP invoice for the CRETA's maintenance, you can select the corresponding asset and mark the transaction as an expense if it's a routine repair. However, if the cost enhances the asset's life or efficiency, you can select Capitalize, and the amount will be added to the asset value. Let's move into the system and quickly create an AP invoice record to capitalize the asset. To generate the AP invoice record, you can search for the AP invoice in the menu Search Utility, or directly move to Financial Management under Accounts Payable Trade. You will find the AP invoice window, open the screen, and create a new record. Select the organization in which you want to generate the record. Select the document type and enter a short description about this record. Enter the original invoice number. The purchase order is system maintained, and if you have a purchase order in the background, you can link it using the Create Lines form. Enter your date and accounting date. Since most of the assets are already depreciated, and hence we are selecting a date for the month of November. The representative will be auto-populated. Select your vendor, and as a result, most of the details will be auto-filled by the system. Select the vendor account and enter the due date if required. Save the record. Move to the Lines tab and click on New Record. Mark the asset-related checkbox as true. As a result, the system will display the fields for asset and capital expense. Select either product or charge. For example, office car maintenance. Select your asset for which you are doing this transaction. Let's say 119. At this point, you need to decide whether the expenses you are recording should be expensed out or capitalized. Select the relevant option. Enter the price, for example, $50,000, and select the applicable tax. Save the record. In this way, you can create multiple lines for the invoice if the original invoice contains multiple items. Move back to the header and complete the record. Once the record is completed, the impact will reflect in the asset register. If you want to see the postings, click on the Not Posted button to post the record, and then click on the Posted button to view the accounting consequences. You can see that the accounts payable trade is credited while the vehicle account is debited, and the tax credit is debited. If you select expense instead of capital, your charge account will be debited, which means there is no impact on the asset register. Now move to the asset register to see the effect of this transaction. You can search for the asset register from the menu Search Utility or directly move to Asset Management. Under Fixed Asset Management, open the asset register. For Hyundai Creta 119, move to the Life Depreciation tab, and you can see the value is increased. The written down value and the capitalized cost are updated based on the AP invoice. If you want to check from which record this impact came, move to the Expense tab, and you will be able to trace the exact charge and invoice that caused the change in the asset register. Since the capitalized value and written down value have changed, and the asset schedules are still based on previous values, you need to update the asset schedule. To do this, move to the Fixed Asset Transaction window. There is a process called Generate Asset Schedule. Click on this process. Select your organization where the assets are available, select your asset group, select the asset, for example, 119, and choose the prospective period. You can keep the existing schedules as they are. Once completed, move to the asset schedule, and you will see that the depreciation amount has been updated by the process. That is how you can capitalize or expense out an asset in Onfinity ERP. That's all in this video. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.